Everyone. We have a little technical difficulty because the user with whom I'm streaming is the one recording, so I can be at both places at the same time. Yeah, so we're gonna use this time to talk a little bit about the engineering behind Windmill. So Abel and Ash have done some significant improvements to workflow engine. Il peut voir mon écran là ou pas? We're just checking that the screen sharing is working. Il peut voir ton écran ou pas?
Ouais. Enfin, t'as déjà le share?
Non, bah je sais pas comment share.
Ah,
Sorry. Great. So one of the things you're going to notice is if you are basically writing a Python script, now the way the imports are going to be done is going to be a lot faster than before. And the reason why is because not only we're using UV to do the individual installation of each dependency, but we're also parallelizing all of them. So let's say I will be importing pandas and another pretty heavy dependency, and we're going to do Control-Enter to set up. So right now, it's not everything was loaded from cache, so it's super fast. But let me make it a little bit harder by having extra requirements that, for instance, make both pandas. Let me check pandas version. 2.2. And Windmill is going to also be a pretty new old version. So now you see that basically, well, the run didn't work, but you see we've both installed both dependencies in parallel. You can do 20 dependencies set up in parallel, and they're both extremely fast. We also made it work with S3. So right before it was sequential, and you had to wait one after the other to basically get the full environment set up. Now, because they're all run in parallel, then basically it's going to be as long as the longest dependencies to set up. And there's a little bit of queuing if you have more than 20 dependencies, but in general, it's going to be extremely fast. So if you had 20 big dependencies before, very, very big dependencies to set up, and it was a very cold cache, it could take up to 20 seconds. If we parallelize everything now, it could take just 1 second. So that's going to be a lot faster. The second, so that's for cold start for Python. The second thing we improved a lot was, and this is not gonna, there's nothing to really show, but more to explain with the way the workflow engine is working. And so if you take a flow with an inline script and you understand a little bit about this definition, you can see that we actually inline the content inside the flow. And that can actually, for edition and for the flow editor, that makes a lot of sense. But for execution, that's actually very inefficient because when we actually are sending the flow in the queue, at least before, we were actually sending the full flow with the inline code at each step. And then for each step, when we were executing them, we were going to send the full code again. And so it was making the queue slow because every time we needed to push and pull the entire definition of the flow and the entire definition of the steps. And it forced the worker to also basically push and pull the entire definition every time. And for the code, it would basically treat the job as a new job and pull the entire code. So one of the improvement we did was basically at deployment time when we actually generate the log file that you can. Here's a non-deployed flow, but for every inline script we're going to generate a log file. We actually pre-compute immutable references in a manner that looks a lot like when instead of using an inline script, you're using a workspace script. By having an immutable reference, we gain a lot because instead of in the flow definition that is sent to the queue, and for the workers to basically have like a flow that contains many steps with a lot of code. Those steps are only going to contain a pointer to that code. The second benefit is because we generate those unique inline script with unique IDs, then the workers themselves, they can cache the content and the lock locally, so that instead of essentially discovering this inline script for the first time every time, what it's going to do is going to pull the definition of the job, realize that it's an ID it has already seen, and instead of basically pulling the code, it's going to take it locally. So we saved a lot in the database. We saved a lot because we put a lot less content in the database. There's a lot less duplicated data. There's a lot of queries that are saved because we're not actually, in most cases, we're not going to pull the data from the database, but actually just locally being cached. And so that's what one of the improvements we did for inline scripts. They're basically as fast as workspace script and even faster. Second thing this is what I explained is makes sense for a sequence of steps, but flows are usually a little bit more complex, and they can have things such as branch one and branch all, and so on. And so when we were executing this, if we take again a look at the definition, we would actually send the full flow again with the full subflows and everything, and could make the flow actually pretty big. This is still a pretty simple flow, but you could imagine the flow being extremely large. What we applied for inline script, we actually did the same for subflows, and instead of sending the full subflow, we actually generate a immutable reference to some optimized tables that we call the flow node. And in the original flow, instead of having the subflow content, we're just going to have an immutable reference to it. One of the benefits of this is that, same as for inline script, we can now basically cache the content of that subflow and save a lot of save both a lot of content being in the database and duplicated because you're executing many times the same flow. And you can also save that the worker, instead of trying to query the content from the database, is actually going to recognize that it's an ID that it has already seen, it has cached on disk or on memory, and are not going to do the query to the database. So it's just caching, and in a lot of cases, those are basically almost obvious things to do, but they do require a lot of engineering because we need at deployment time to analyze the structure of the flow, to create immutable references everywhere, to change them in place, to have caching in place in the worker. So it's just normal optimization, but it's 90% of the optimization that were obvious and that we should do. And they're going to have like a huge impact on a lot of the database. So that work was done by Abel. We still have some improvement to do, not on the flow, but on the app and the app executions, because a bit similarly for apps, we're actually sending the full code and we could do a lot better. So yeah, so this is some of the improvements that are coming, and both are going to have a very significant impact on the perceived performance of executions. On that note, do you want to say anything, Hugo? Or Etienne, do you want to come here and showcase your work?
Yes.
Faut que tu viennes ici.
Ok, enfin, je veux bien. Moi, je t'entends bien là-haut, mais lui, je t'entends pas. Okay, so I guess it's only some people who cannot hear as well. So I'll go over one of the features that we've already talked about in other times, and that's basically the full text search in Windmill. So the first thing that came is the full text search on jobs. So as you know, you can click here on search, search across completed runs, and then you can type any string, and it will search across script path, result, arguments, and logs, and basically match all the jobs that are matching these arguments. So this is quite a powerful feature, and yeah, we're kind of putting it on the spotlight again because it's becoming more stable and more polished, and we're soon going to be kind of pushing it forward and like pushing it as a main feature of Windmill. So, well, this is the first part. And there's also full text search on service logs. So as you know, you can access your service logs here on the service logs page. And you can also search across the logs. So if I go and do something, okay, there's nothing there. Well, yeah, I mean, here you'll get basically the page with all the results. And you can basically search kind of like a small Grafana kind of thing. And yeah, so we just wanted to put it in the spotlight once again. It works on S3. It backs up the index on S3, and it basically is working quite well now. So yeah, we're happy to share this. I'm not sure if there's anyone else who's going to present.
Let me just check internally if you guys wanting to speak.
Okay.
Um, well, so we're gonna move to Hugo.
Okay, testing. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Here, can you
Oh
hear
yeah,
me?
we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Cool.
Oh yeah. All right. Um, Let me share my screen again. All right. Yeah. So this week I've been working on captures. So basically, it's a new feature for script in the script editor and in the flow editor to help you prototype triggers directly from there. So how it works is that you can easily basically set up some temporary triggers which will be listening to events. So you just need, so we have the webhook, which is just an endpoint, right? And then you can just start capturing. So now I'll just send a payload. Let's just try this. And then we see here that it appears directly. And if my script matches the schema, I can just apply the arguments and it will apply them here. So you can check like end to end that the trigger will work as desired. I don't know if all of you know this, but we also have this concept of preprocessor, which basically gives you more information about the trigger. So it's not that interesting for webhooks. We just see the kind, but for the custom routes and the WebSocket and so on, we have more information like parameters in the URL and other stuff, and headers and so on. And basically, here we have a little helper script which gets you which adds the preprocessor function to your script, and we see it here. And again, we see that when the preprocessor toggle is on, we have like this additional information, and when I apply the arguments to, in this case, it will go to the preprocessor tab and it will fill in all the arguments, so you can test this part as well. As I said, we have all those trigger kinds. I can also show you WebSockets. So I should have a local server. Yeah, we see that. So it just connected right now, and so we got some new payloads that we can try, and then we can just apply it, and once again it will fill in the arguments, etc. And we also implemented it for in the flow editor, as I said at the beginning, and it works really similarly. Basically, yeah, I mean it's the exact same interface. The only difference here is that in addition to oh, sorry, let me just send a new payload. Oop. Why? Oh, yeah, sorry. In addition to applying the arguments to the flow, we can also apply the schema. So it will automatically create the right input fields based on the payload you send. This was actually it already exists right now in Windmill, but basically we're bringing it a step forward with this tab. It's not released yet. We're still working on the UI a bit, but we hope to release it next week. And we'll write some docs about it, of course, as well. But feel free to send us some feedback about it. We'll try to make it as usable as possible. Yep, that's all for me. I'm not sure if anyone else is presenting, but I don't think so.
So this week we had a good streaming setup, but we didn't have everything prepared. So basically, the setup doing the recording and the streaming and us were at a separate place, and we could not use the same user, which is why it was a bit chaotic. Next week is going to be perfect. But in the meantime, do anyone have any questions? Could you write them on the chat? And I think you can also do it on YouTube. But yeah. No, you're here on YouTube, joining in Discord. Sure, we have a question about updating nicks. We can do this. And are there any other question we may answer from the chat? No? Maybe Ross? Yeah, and yeah, I'm very excited about Capture. I think it's gonna close the loop between the way trigger work and the way you would normally develop new scripts and new flows, where basically you don't want to first create the script and then test the trigger. You would actually want to, as you're developing the script, test the trigger live and only create the triggers when you're done. So it's going to be a lot more natural and intuitive as a flow. So, very excited about those features being released, and see you next week and have a great weekend.
Bye bye.